This video could literally save you thousands of dollars. Sounds dramatic, right? Well, if you're in the market to buy a home in Hamilton or the GTA, pay attention. We are in a buyer's market right now in many parts of Hamilton and the GTA. That means houses are sitting on the market longer and buyers like you have more opportunity. But just because there are more homes for sale doesn't mean every seller is ready to make a deal. So Morgan, how do you spot the sellers that are actually ready to negotiate? Good question. That's exactly what we go over in this video so you can score a better deal. My name is Morgan Little. I'm a realtor here in Hamilton. If I can ever be of any assistance, feel free to book a call using the link below. Now let's get into it. Starting with the first hint. Price changes. If the home has recently dropped in price, or sometimes it's even gone back up, it shows that the seller is trying to create some attention there. They're likely watching the market and trying to meet buyers where they're at. And they'll often include price reduction or price change in the listing description. So if you see a home that's been reduced once or even multiple times, that's usually a good sign. This is one of the biggest mistakes a seller can make, especially in this market. And I've had a lot of conversations with sellers around this, and that's about pricing the home correctly the first time. You don't want to be in a position where you're chasing the market down. And I often see that as like a secondary tactic that maybe the realtor couldn't get the seller at the price that they thought was reasonable the first time. And once it's sat on the market, they see, okay, maybe I'll listen to them. They may know what they're talking about. And then they'll reduce the price from the price that they wanted. They'll often come in at a offer date price with, $499, $699, $899, whatever the price point may be, trying to draw more attention to maybe hope to get closer to that number that they originally wanted. I'm seeing a lot of that happen in this market, and it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. The second thing to watch out for are vacant properties. For obvious reasons, if a home is sitting empty, that means the seller is paying a mortgage, likely utilities, taxes, maybe condo fees, if that's what you're looking at, all without actually living in the property. They probably have another property that they're also paying those things on. And every day it doesn't sell, it's going to cost them more money. That sounds like motivation to me. A lot more than someone who is currently living there or maybe has it rented out anyways. Speaking of which, the one thing I often warn buyers about, at least to just be wary of, is homes that are tenanted. If the listing description says tenants will vacate on such and such date, that you need to be probably a little less worried about, because if they don't actually vacate by that date, you don't have to close on the property if you've included that in your offer. But if the tenants have no real motivation to leave, if they're paying low rent, then you may be inheriting tenants that don't want to leave, and you as the new buyer may not be able to move into your new home as soon as you'd hope. Number 3, check the closing date. Most listings under closing will say 30 to 60 or 60 to 90 days, or maybe flexible, something along those lines. But if you see a specific closing date, that likely means that the seller already purchased a new home and they need to be in that home by that date. So they need to have this home sold. That can definitely be a big motivator. This is pretty key here because a lot of people tend to think that price is the only thing that sellers care about. And that's not always the case. Different factors can be important to different people. And in a case like this, the closing date may be the number one thing and price may come in at a second. And if you can match a closing date, you may have yourself a deal. Number 4 may sound obvious, and that's look for the word motivated. It's not always in the description that is viewable by the general public. Sometimes it is, but oftentimes realtors will put it in what's called the broker remarks, which are notes to other realtors. It may say something like motivated seller or motivated to sell. And that's essentially letting us know that, they're probably open to make a deal. This isn't always a sure thing by any means. I've definitely run into something saying motivated seller, and then you speak to the agent and you can tell they're definitely stuck on some certain price. None of these are foolproof, like I said, but they can be great indicators, especially if you see multiple in one listing. The 5th one I'll mention here is big commission incentives. Depending on your market, there's often a general commission amount that people go with. It's not a standard by any means, and some people do get this confused. Commission is always negotiable. But as I said, depending on the market, 2% or 2.5% is generally the going rate. But if a home is offering an increased buyer agent commission, that could show that they're motivated to sell and trying to attract more eyes. Now, steering is illegal. CBC Marketplace did a whole thing about this, and that's kind of the opposite. When someone is offering lower commission, there's been some evidence of some bad apple realtors not showing that property to their clients because they won't get as much commission. That is illegal, but the opposite can be true, where more commission is being offered to an agent. And in that case, an agent has the same duties and responsibilities. They can't push a client towards a house because it's offering more commission. That also would be illegal. But that being said, there are often times that they'll increase that commission just to try to, spark some incentive. I actually recently saw a place in my neighborhood where, again, in Hamilton, it tends to be 2%. They were offering 5% to the buyer agent brokerage, which is unheard of. Obviously quite motivated. And as a bonus tip here, look for when, or ask your agent to look for when the seller actually purchased the home, because they may be up for mortgage renewal. If they bought 4 or 5 years ago, that mortgage increase could be a hefty amount and they're looking to get out before that happens. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Did any of these surprise you, or do you have some tips that you look for when looking for a deal? Let me know in the comments below. And again, these are just things to keep in mind. Just because a home has been sitting on the market for quite a while doesn't mean that they're willing to give it away. In fact, if they haven't changed the price in months, they're probably not that motivated. We're actually still seeing quite a bit of that these days, believe it or not. The COVID craze is still on some people's minds, and they just have the hardest time letting go that they know that their neighbor sold for X amount over asking and they can't get that price now. Trust me, those days are long gone. So remember, not every seller is desperate, but those who are will probably give you some signs. You just need to know where to look. And that's where working with the right realtor comes into play. Again, if I can be of any help in Hamilton or other parts of the GTA, feel free to reach out. You can book a call using the link below or simply shoot me a text and I'm happy to have a chat. Till then, I'll see you on the next one.